The entire restaurant burst into laughter. A woman stood up and called her husband a useless poor man in front of everyone. She said he could never afford a life like hers. But seconds later, the ground outside began to shake. A private jet was landing, and the pilot walked straight into the restaurant, looking for the man she had just humiliated. Daniel Carter looked like the kind of man nobody respected. Simple clothes, quiet voice, no expensive watch, no flashy car. And for 3 years, his wife Sophia reminded him of that every single day. She told her friends she had made the biggest mistake of her life marrying him. She laughed at him. She mocked him. Sometimes even in public. But what Sophia didn't know was that the man she called a failure was hiding a secret so powerful that when the truth finally came out, her entire world would collapse in front of hundreds of people. Because Daniel wasn't poor. Not even close. He was simply waiting for the right moment. And that moment had just arrived. Before we continue this unbelievable story, welcome to Prime Tale. If you enjoy dramatic billionaire stories, shocking twists, and emotional revenge moments, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. Because the story you're about to hear will prove one powerful truth. Never judge someone by what they show you. Now let's continue. Before we continue this unbelievable story, welcome to the channel. If you enjoy dramatic billionaire stories, shocking twists, and emotional revenge moments, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. Because the story you're about to hear will prove one powerful truth. Never judge someone by what they show you. Now let's continue. 10 minutes later, the restaurant doors opened. A tall man wearing a professional pilot uniform stepped inside. The room fell quiet. People instinctively noticed him. A pilot walking into a luxury restaurant was unusual. He scanned the room carefully. Then his eyes landed on Daniel. Without hesitation, he walked straight toward the table. Sophia frowned. "Why is he coming here?" she whispered. The pilot stopped beside Daniel. He stood straight and spoke respectfully. "Good evening, Mr. Carter." Sophia blinked. "Mr. Carter?" The pilot continued. "Your jet is ready for departure, sir." The entire restaurant went silent. Every head turned toward the table. Sophia stared at him in disbelief. "What did you just say?" The pilot repeated calmly. "Your aircraft is prepared for departure." Sophia suddenly burst into laughter. "Oh my God." She wiped tears from her eyes. "This is pathetic." She pointed at Daniel. "You think pretending to own a jet will impress people?" The pilot looked confused. Then he calmly replied, "No, ma'am." He gestured toward Daniel. "He owns the aircraft." A ripple of whispers spread through the restaurant. Sophia stopped laughing. Her smile slowly disappeared. "That's not funny." Daniel sighed quietly. "Give me a moment," he told the pilot. The pilot nodded respectfully. "Of course, sir," and stepped back. Sophia stared at Daniel. "What kind of joke is this?" Daniel slowly reached into his pocket. He removed a small black metal card and placed it on the table. Within seconds, the restaurant manager rushed over. The moment he saw the card, his face turned pale. Mr. Carter." He bowed slightly. Sophia's heart started racing. Because suddenly, her poor husband didn't look poor anymore. Sophia stared at the restaurant manager in complete confusion. The man's behavior didn't make sense. Just moments ago he had been politely serving guests like any other staff member. But now he stood beside Daniel with visible nervousness, almost as if he were afraid of making a mistake. Mr. Carter," the manager said again, straightening his posture. Sophia frowned. "Excuse me," she interrupted sharply. "Why are you calling him that?" The manager hesitated for a moment, glancing briefly at Daniel before answering. "Because that is his name, ma'am." Sophia laughed nervously. "That's not what I meant." She pointed at Daniel. "I mean, why are you treating him like he's important?" The manager blinked in surprise. The surrounding tables had grown quiet again. Several guests were clearly listening now. Daniel remained calm in his seat. His expression hadn't changed at all. The manager cleared his throat. "Ma'am, Mr. Carter is one of our VIP members." Sophia waved her hand dismissively. "That doesn't explain the jet." The manager hesitated again. Then he spoke carefully. "Mr. Carter owns several aircraft." The words landed like a heavy weight in the room. Sophia's chair scraped loudly against the floor as she stood up. "What?" Daniel slowly looked up at her. Sophia shook her head. "No, no, this is ridiculous." She turned back to the manager. "You're telling me this man owns the jet that just landed?" "Yes, ma'am." Whispers spread across the restaurant again. Sophia felt her heartbeat speeding up. Something about this situation felt completely wrong. She turned back toward Daniel. "Tell him to stop joking," she demanded. Daniel didn't respond. Instead, he calmly reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. He unlocked the screen and slid it across the table toward her. "Read," he said quietly. Sophia frowned and picked up the phone. At first she thought it was some random article, but then she noticed the headline. Her eyes widened. The headline read, "Billionaire investor Daniel Carter expands global aviation network." Her breathing stopped for a moment. She looked closer at the photo in the article. It was Daniel, standing beside a private jet, wearing a suit, shaking hands with international executives. Sophia's fingers trembled as she scrolled. More photos. More headlines. More proof. Each one showing the same man she had just mocked in front of an entire restaurant. Her husband, Daniel Carter. Her voice came out barely above a whisper. "You're a billionaire." Daniel leaned back calmly. "I prefer the word investor." Sophia felt the room spinning slightly. Nothing made sense anymore. For 3 years she had believed Daniel was poor. He had never shown wealth. Never bragged. Never displayed anything expensive. She stared at him again. But why? Daniel looked directly into her eyes. "Because I wanted the truth." Sophia's hands were still shaking as she sat back down slowly. The restaurant around them had become eerily quiet. Guests who had once laughed were now watching carefully, whispering among themselves. Daniel remained calm. Almost too calm. Sophia swallowed hard. "I don't understand," she said. Daniel rested his hands on the table. "When we first met," he began slowly, "you told me something interesting." Sophia frowned. "What?" "You said you hated rich men." She blinked. "I said I hated arrogant rich men." Daniel nodded. "Yes." He paused for a moment. "You said money made people selfish." Sophia remembered that conversation. It had happened during their first date at a small coffee shop. She had complained about wealthy businessmen showing off expensive watches and cars. Daniel continued speaking calmly. "So I decided not to tell you anything." Sophia's eyes widened. "For 3 years." "Yes." Her chest tightened. "You were testing me?" Daniel looked at her carefully. Sophia's hands were still shaking as she sat back down slowly. The restaurant around them had become eerily quiet. Guests who had once laughed were now watching carefully, whispering among themselves. Daniel remained calm. Almost too calm. Sophia swallowed hard. "I don't understand," she said. Daniel rested his hands on the table. "When we first met," he began slowly, "you told me something interesting." Sophia frowned. "What?" "You said you hated rich men." She blinked. "I said I hated arrogant rich men." Daniel nodded. "Yes." He paused for a moment. "You said money made people selfish." Sophia remembered that conversation. It had happened during their first date at a small coffee shop. She had complained about wealthy businessmen showing off expensive watches and cars. Daniel continued speaking calmly. "So I decided not to tell you anything." Sophia's eyes widened. "For 3 years." "Yes." Her chest tightened. You were testing me? Daniel looked at her carefully. I was learning who you really were. Sophia felt her stomach twist. That's not fair. Daniel's voice remained steady. Neither was the way you treated me. Those words hit harder than anything else that night. Sophia looked down at the table. Her mind replayed dozens of memories. The insults. The sarcastic jokes. The way she had mocked him in front of her friends. She suddenly felt very small. I didn't know, she whispered. Daniel shook his head slowly. That wasn't the problem. Sophia looked up. Then what was? Daniel's answer was simple. You only respected money. The words hung heavily in the air. Sophia's eyes filled with tears. That's not true. Daniel raised an eyebrow slightly. Isn't it? She tried to respond. But no words came out. Because deep down, she knew he was right. Sophia sat frozen in her chair, the phone still in her hand. The article on the screen stared back at her like a harsh accusation. Daniel Carter. Billionaire investor. Aviation magnate. The same man she had just humiliated minutes ago. Her husband. Her breathing grew uneven as she slowly placed the phone back on the table. Around them, the restaurant had become completely silent. Earlier, people had laughed when she mocked Daniel. Now those same people were whispering. Some stared at her with shock. Others looked at Daniel with a completely different kind of respect. Sophia suddenly felt something she had never expected to feel in this situation. Embarrassment. Real, crushing embarrassment. Her voice trembled. Daniel, why didn't you tell me? Daniel studied her face calmly. For the first time that evening, there was a hint of sadness in his eyes. I tried. Sophia blinked. When? 3 years ago, he replied quietly. Her mind scrambled through old memories. Their first date. The small cafe. The quiet conversation. Daniel had joked about owning several companies. She remembered laughing and assuming he was exaggerating. She had never asked again. Sophia slowly shook her head. That wasn't serious. Daniel leaned back slightly in his chair. It was serious. A heavy silence settled between them. Across the restaurant, a man at another table whispered loudly enough for several people to hear. That's Daniel Carter, the aviation investor. Another guest murmured. The guy who owns those private logistics companies? Someone else said. I read about him last month. Sophia's stomach tightened. The entire room was realizing the truth. And suddenly she understood something terrifying. Everyone had heard her insults. Everyone had watched her humiliation of a billionaire. She covered her mouth slightly. This can't be happening. Daniel stood slowly. The movement immediately drew everyone's attention. Sophia looked up at him quickly. You're leaving. My pilot is waiting, he replied calmly. Sophia felt panic rising in her chest. Wait. She stood up quickly. Chairs scraped across the floor as she stepped closer to him. Daniel, please. Daniel looked down at her. Not with anger, but with a quiet distance that felt even worse. Sophia lowered her voice. I didn't mean those things. Daniel tilted his head slightly. You didn't. Her eyes filled with tears. I was just upset. Daniel's expression remained calm. You called me useless. Sophia's throat tightened. I was angry. You called me a failure. I didn't mean it. You said you were embarrassed to be married to me. Her voice broke. I'm sorry. Daniel sighed softly. For a moment, it looked like he might say something more. But instead he simply shook his head. Some words reveal the truth, he said quietly. By now the entire restaurant was watching them. Phones were slowly appearing in people's hands. Several guests were quietly recording the moment. Sophia noticed the cameras. Her humiliation deepened. Just minutes earlier, she had enjoyed being the center of attention while mocking Daniel. Now the attention felt like a spotlight exposing every mistake she had made. Daniel turned toward the restaurant manager. I'll settle the bill. The manager immediately shook his head nervously. No, Mr. Carter. Tonight's dinner is on the house. Sophia stared at the manager in disbelief. The same place she believed Daniel couldn't afford was now offering him free service. Daniel nodded politely. Thank you. He turned toward the exit. Sophia stepped in front of him. Please don't leave like this. Daniel stopped. What would you prefer? Her voice trembled. Let's talk somewhere private. Daniel looked around the restaurant. At the people watching. At the phones recording. At the moment, he said calmly, privacy doesn't seem possible. Sophia felt tears running down her face now. I didn't know who you were. Daniel looked at her carefully. That was the point. The words felt like a knife. Sophia grabbed his sleeve. Daniel, please listen. He gently removed her hand. The action was calm, but final. Outside the restaurant windows, the lights of the runway glowed brightly in the night. The sleek private jet waited quietly, a reminder of the truth Sophia had ignored for years. The pilot appeared near the entrance again. Sir, we're ready. Daniel nodded. I'm coming. Sophia's heart raced. You're really leaving? Daniel looked at her one last time. You made it very clear tonight, he said softly, where I stand in your life. Then he walked toward the door. And Sophia suddenly realized something terrifying. The man she had mocked for being poor was walking out of her life, and she might never get the chance to fix her mistake. Daniel walked toward the restaurant exit without looking back. The doors opened automatically, and a rush of cool night air entered the room. Sophia stood frozen for a second. Her mind struggled to accept what had just happened. 3 years. 3 years of believing she had married a weak, unsuccessful man. 3 years of sarcasm, complaints, and humiliation. And now she had just discovered the truth in the worst possible way. Her husband was not poor. He was a billionaire. And he was leaving. Daniel. Her voice echoed through the restaurant as she ran after him. The guests watched silently as she rushed out the door. Outside, the night was bright with runway lights. The nearby private airstrip stretched across the dark landscape like a glowing path. At the far end of the pavement, the sleek white private jet waited. Its engines were already humming softly. Sophia slowed down as she approached Daniel. He had stopped near a black luxury car parked beside the runway. The pilot stood nearby, speaking quietly with another crew member. Sophia reached him, slightly out of breath. Daniel, please. Daniel turned slowly. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The tension between them felt heavier than the night air. Sophia wiped the tears from her face. I didn't know, she said again. Daniel studied her expression. You keep saying that. Because it's true. He remained silent. Sophia took a step closer. If I had known, I would have treated you differently. Daniel's eyebrows lifted slightly. That's exactly the problem. Sophia frowned. What do you mean? Daniel gestured toward the jet. That airplane didn't appear tonight. It has existed for years. Sophia felt a knot forming in her stomach. I know that. But your respect only appeared once you saw it. His words were calm, but they carried undeniable truth. Sophia shook her head quickly. That's not fair. Daniel's voice remained steady. Isn't it? Sophia looked down at the ground. For the first time in a long while, she had no clever response. The silence between them stretched for several seconds. Finally, she whispered, Please don't leave. Daniel looked toward the jet again. The pilot noticed them and waited respectfully. I have business overseas tomorrow morning, Daniel said. Sophia stepped forward and grabbed his arm gently. Forget the business. Daniel looked at her hand, then slowly looked back into her eyes. For 3 years, he said quietly, I asked for very little from you. Sophia swallowed. Just respect. Her chest tightened. And tonight, he continued, you showed me exactly how much of that I had. Sophia's tears returned. I made a mistake. Daniel nodded slowly. Yes. But mistakes have consequences. The private jet's engines began to grow louder. The crew had clearly started preparing for departure. Sophia felt panic rising in her chest. She looked at the massive aircraft, then back at Daniel. "Daniel, please don't go like this." Daniel remained calm. "Like what?" "Like we're strangers." Daniel's expression softened slightly. "We've been strangers for a long time." Sophia shook her head desperately. "No, we haven't." Daniel looked toward the restaurant building behind them. Through the glass windows, people were still watching. Some were still filming. "You said something tonight," Daniel continued. Sophia held her breath. "You said you were embarrassed to be married to me." Her voice cracked. "I didn't mean that." Daniel gave a small, sad smile. "You meant it in that moment." The words struck deep. Sophia tried again. "I was angry." Daniel responded calmly. And honesty often appears during anger. The jet engines roared louder. The pilot approached respectfully. "Sir, we should depart soon." Daniel nodded. "Thank you." Sophia's heart raced. "You're really leaving?" Daniel looked at her one final time. "Yes." The simple answer shattered her. She stepped forward quickly. "Daniel, I'll change." He studied her face. "People don't change in 5 minutes." "But I can try." Daniel paused. For a brief moment, it seemed like he might reconsider. But then he gently removed her hand from his sleeve. "I hope you do," he said quietly. Then he turned and walked toward the aircraft stairs. Sophia stood frozen. The runway lights reflected off the polished metal of the jet. The pilot opened the door. Daniel climbed the steps without looking back. The door closed. The engines roared to life. Sophia felt her legs weaken as the jet slowly began moving down the runway. Her mind replayed every word she had said in the restaurant. Every insult. Every laugh. Every moment she had treated Daniel like he was worthless. Now the truth had revealed itself. And it was too late. The jet accelerated faster and faster. Within seconds, it lifted into the night sky. Sophia watched as the aircraft disappeared into the clouds. And for the first time in her life, she realized she had just lost the most valuable person she had ever known. Sophia remained standing beside the runway long after the jet disappeared into the night sky. The roar of the engines slowly faded until the sky returned to silence. But inside her mind, everything was loud. Every insult she had thrown at Daniel replayed again and again. Her chest felt tight as she turned slowly back toward the restaurant. The large glass windows still glowed with warm light. Inside, people were moving again. But something had changed. They were all looking at her. Sophia walked back toward the entrance, her steps slower now. When the doors opened, the quiet conversations inside immediately stopped. Dozens of eyes turned toward her. This time, no one laughed. No one whispered jokes. Instead, the expressions on their faces were something much worse. Pity. And judgment. Sophia lowered her head and walked quickly toward the table where everything had started. Her phone buzzed suddenly in her purse. Once. Twice. Then again. She pulled it out. 5 notifications. 10. 15. Her heart began beating faster as she opened the first message. It was from her coworker. "Sophia, is this you?" Attached to the message was a video. Her stomach dropped. She tapped it. The screen filled with the exact moment inside the restaurant. Her voice echoed through the recording. "Look at you. You can't even afford the bill." The video continued. Guests laughing. Her friends smirking. And then the moment the pilot walked in. "Your jet is ready for departure, Mr. Carter." Sophia's hands began to shake. The video cut to her shocked expression. Then Daniel showing the article on his phone. Then the moment she realized the truth. The video ended with Daniel walking away. Sophia felt the blood drain from her face. She checked the view count. 2.1 million views. Her breath caught in her throat. How is this possible? Another message appeared. Then another. Then another. Friends. Co-workers. even family members. Everyone had seen it. The caption above the viral video read, "Woman humiliates poor husband in public, then discovers he's a billionaire." Sophia felt the world spinning around her. The humiliation she had created for Daniel had now become her own. Episode 10. The call she was afraid to make. Sophia drove home that night in complete silence. The city lights blurred past her car windows as her mind struggled to process everything. The viral video. The whispers in the restaurant. The moment the jet lifted into the sky. By the time she reached the house, her phone had over 50 new notifications. She couldn't bring herself to read them. The house felt strangely empty when she stepped inside. For 3 years she had believed this place was small and unimpressive. Now it looked completely different. She suddenly realized something. Daniel had never complained about the house. Never complained about anything. He had simply lived quietly beside her. Sophia walked slowly into the living room and sat down. Her hands trembled as she opened the viral video again. Millions of views now. Comments were flooding in. Some people criticized her harshly. Others defended Daniel. Many simply watched the drama unfold. But one comment stood out. Sophia drove home that night in complete silence. The city lights blurred past her car windows as her mind struggled to process everything. The viral video. The whispers in the restaurant. The moment the jet lifted into the sky. By the time she reached the house, her phone had over 50 new notifications. She couldn't bring herself to read them. The house felt strangely empty when she stepped inside. For 3 years she had believed this place was small and unimpressive. Now it looked completely different. She suddenly realized something. Daniel had never complained about the house. Never complained about anything. He had simply lived quietly beside her. Sophia walked slowly into the living room and sat down. Her hands trembled as she opened the viral video again. Millions of views now. Comments were flooding in. Some people criticized her harshly. Others defended Daniel. Many simply watched the drama unfold. But one comment stood out. That man isn't just rich. Daniel Carter owns half the private cargo aviation routes in Europe. Sophia's eyes widened. Another comment read, "She just humiliated one of the most private billionaires in the industry." Her chest tightened again. Daniel hadn't just been wealthy. He was powerful. And she had treated him like he was nothing. Sophia stared at the phone screen for a long time. Then finally, she opened her contacts. Her finger hovered over Daniel's name. She hesitated. What could she even say? Sorry. That word suddenly felt far too small. But the silence felt worse. Her finger slowly pressed the call button. The phone rang once. Twice. 3 times. Her heart pounded harder with each ring. Then, suddenly, the call connected. But instead of Daniel's voice, another man answered. "Mr. Carter's office." Sophia froze. "Oh, office. Yes, how may I help you?" Her voice shook. I'm his wife." There was a brief pause on the line. Then the man replied calmly. "I'm sorry, ma'am. Mr. Carter left the country tonight." Sophia's heart sank. When will he return? Another pause. Then the assistant spoke again. "That information is currently private." The call ended. Sophia slowly lowered the phone. For the first time in her life, she realized something terrifying. She didn't actually know her husband at all. The house felt colder than usual that night. Sophia sat alone in the living room, staring at the dark screen of her phone. Daniel was gone. Not just gone for the night. Gone from the country. The silence inside the house felt heavy, almost suffocating. For years she had complained about this house being too small, too ordinary, too unimpressive. But now it felt enormous. Empty. Sophia leaned back slowly on the couch and closed her eyes. Her mind replayed the restaurant scene again. Her mocking laughter. The shocked faces of the guests. The moment the pilot had said those words. "Your jet is ready for departure, Mr. Carter." Her chest tightened again. She grabbed a pillow beside her and held it close, as if trying to hold onto something familiar. But nothing felt normal anymore. Then, suddenly, knock, knock. Sophia jumped slightly. She checked the time. Almost midnight. Who would be visiting this late? She walked slowly to the door and opened it. A man in a dark suit stood outside. He carried a slim leather briefcase. "Good evening," he said politely. "Are you Mrs. Sophia Carter?" Sophia nodded cautiously. "Yes." The man opened his briefcase and removed a large envelope. "My name is Richard Hale," he said. "I represent Mr. Daniel Carter." Sophia felt a sudden chill run through her body. "What is this?" The lawyer handed the envelope to her. "Mr. Carter instructed me to deliver these documents tonight." Sophia looked down at the envelope. Her hands felt strangely heavy as she opened it. Inside were several neatly organized papers. The first page made her breath stop. Divorce agreement. Sophia looked up immediately. "What is this?" The lawyer remained calm. "Mr. Carter has already signed the documents." Her heart began pounding. "You're joking." "I'm afraid not." Sophia flipped through the papers quickly. Her eyes widened with every page. Financial statements. Legal terms. Asset protections. And one line that hit her like lightning. Marital asset separation according to premarital agreement. Sophia's voice trembled. "We never signed a prenup." The lawyer adjusted his glasses slightly. "Yes, you did." Sophia's mind raced. "When?" 3 years ago." Memories suddenly flashed in her mind. The day before their wedding. Daniel had asked her to sign some documents. He had explained they were simple financial forms required by one of his small investments. She had signed without reading them carefully. Her legs suddenly felt weak. "That was—" "Yes," the lawyer said calmly. "That was the prenuptial agreement." Sophia felt like the floor had disappeared beneath her feet. Sophia stared at the documents in disbelief. Her hands trembled as she flipped through the pages again. Every line made things clearer. Daniel had protected everything. His companies. His investments. His aviation network. Everything. The lawyer spoke carefully. According to the agreement, all assets owned by Mr. Carter before the marriage remain entirely his. Sophia looked up slowly. "What about the house?" The lawyer glanced at the papers. "The house is also owned by Mr. Carter." Sophia felt the words strike like a hammer. "What?" "You are permitted to remain here temporarily," the lawyer continued. "But ownership belongs to him." Sophia shook her head. "This can't be real." The lawyer placed another document on the table. "This letter is from Mr. Carter." Sophia stared at the envelope. Her chest tightened as she slowly opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Daniel's handwriting. Her eyes began scanning the words. "Sophia, I didn't want things to end this way." Her throat tightened. "When we met, I believed you cared about who I was, not what I had." Sophia's eyes filled with tears. "So I decided to live simply. I wanted to see if love could exist without money." She covered her mouth as she continued reading. "For 3 years, I hoped you would see me. Not my wealth. Not my success. Just me." Tears rolled down her cheeks now. "But tonight you made something very clear." Her heart pounded painfully. "You weren't embarrassed by poverty. You were embarrassed by me." Sophia's vision blurred. She could barely continue reading. "That is why I am leaving. Not because I hate you, but because I finally understand the truth." She dropped the letter slowly. The room felt unbearably quiet. The lawyer spoke softly. "Mr. Carter also asked me to inform you of one final thing." Sophia looked up weakly. "What?" The lawyer paused before answering. "Tomorrow morning, the video from the restaurant will likely reach international news outlets." Sophia's heart stopped. This situation is spreading very quickly. The full weight of everything finally crashed down on her. her marriage, her reputation, her future, all collapsing in one night. And the worst part was, she had caused it herself.